want to tell you guys outside near the bar, near the Airstream, is an experiential tent. And I want you guys to all check it out, not when Peter's talking, but as soon as you can, because inside of the tent is a Vasper machine. And the Vasper machine actually freezes your body as you work out. It's incredible. It's a 20-minute workout. All of you guys can do a 20-minute workout. It mimics a 2-hour workout. So please head out to the experiential tent. There's a lot of amazing things out there. All right, no more talking. And ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together. The founder of Mind Architect, Peter Crone.
Your slides?
No.
Okay, great.
Hi. How are we all doing? Just a little correction. He introduced me as Dr. Peter Crone. I'm not a doctor, so you can trust me. No offense. Just out of curiosity, a little segue from the topic. Who here has done speed dating? Anyone? I haven't dabbled myself, but I've never been to a conference where I feel like this is speed biohacking. Does it feel like that to you? So, first of all, I just want to say thank you to Nick and Sandra for asking me to come along and share a few words. I might be the anomaly today. I'm not going to throw a ton of information at you. It's really impressive what's been happening here. I feel completely inadequate relative to Daniel Kraft, who flies planes, can make like these AI like avatars of himself. I personally want to get one of those GI figures made. That looks super cool. But I'm gonna talk a little bit about time. So I want you all, just wherever you're at, I want you just to take a really deep breath when I ask you, and all you're going to do is you're going to hold it as long as you can. So for some of you it might be 5 seconds, for some of you it might be 20 seconds, whatever's comfortable, but to the point where you feel just a little bit of tension and discomfort in your body. Okay, so totally whatever's appropriate for your lung capacity. I want you to take a deep breath, hold it as long as you can, and then release it. Everyone got it? Okay, go. Hands up still, who's holding? Show offs. Okay, so you can release. I thought it would have been quite hilarious if I was a professional freediver and I could hold my breath. The record apparently is like 24 minutes, 30 something seconds. Yeah, it's pretty impressive, right? What do you think, just out of curiosity, if that was my capacity? If I stood here, held my breath for 24 minutes, knowing that my talk is only scheduled for 30, what might have been some of the responses, appropriately so, if I just stood here and held my breath for that period of time? Just anyone, what might you have been going through? I can see you all, by the way, I'm just... You're focusing, but if I'm standing here as a presenter... What an ass. Okay, that's an appropriate response. Oh, not that. Okay. I noticed she was walking behind me earlier. I didn't know. What an ass, right? What else? Pardon? Comparing. Yeah, you might feel a little inadequate. But in the context of the talk, what would that feel for you? If I'm just standing here quiet, waste of time, right? Yeah, total waste of time. Totally. So I want you to consider, so we've had some great presenters, right? I loved Santucci talking about all the endocrine disruptors, all the toxins out there. What do you think is one of the biggest contributors to aging? Stress. Is it not? Like, I mean, the precursor to nearly every disease, you hear it, obviously, physiologically, people talk about inflammation. But I want you to consider it's stress. And by design, whether you realize it or not, the primordial imperative of every mammal is to survive. Now, what that means is you're wired, whether you like it or not, and I want you to consider it's automated, it's not a conscious choice, to try and get somewhere you're not. Now, I just want you to consider that. Look at that phenomenon. So actually, ironically, just to consider, one of the biggest contributors to aging is trying not to age. Dope. Shit. I probably won't get invited back next year. I usually, like I've spoken, I think about 4 longevity events in the last 5 months. I'm going to Dubai in 2 weeks and Miami. And you can go out here. I mean, it's beautiful what they put on, and they have all of the fancy toys from cryogenic chambers to hyperbaric chambers, red light, you know, peptides, all of it, right? And I'm the guy standing up front saying, you can't access true vitality until you free your mind. End of story. You agree?
Yeah.
Great. So we're going to talk about a dysfunctional relationship to time. If we look at language, which is what I really traffic in, I want you to consider that who you are just walking conversations. Language is split into 3 predominant buckets. So if I represent, if looking from your side, left to right, and we think in terms of linear time, which is how the brain tends to associate with time, albeit illusory, if I'm in the middle here and we have 2 other buckets and I represent presence, again, we're going from this way to this way, what bucket is this representing in our language about time? Past, right? Very simple. So past, if we go from past to present, what do we have over here? Okay, awesome. Smarter crowd than I thought. So, who here, just look at the main arenas of your life: health, wealth, relationships, purpose. Who has, in at least one area, right now in your life, if you were to scan using your mind, looking at all of those, your health, personal or loved ones, your wealth, your your actual finances or your business, your relationships, and then some sort of sense of purpose, who here could categorically say you have at least one problem in all of those? Not, they don't have to be in each of them, but just by show of hands, who here has, you're basically dealing with a problem in life? Okay, at least 5 of you. That's really, wow, I'm not sure I'm at the right place. You could consider that the other problem you have is that you don't like to raise your hand in public. So let's just say for shits and giggles that you all have a fucking problem, right? Would it be impressive if you could walk out of here and none of you have a problem? Would that be worth the price of entry? Yeah? Okay. I'm good. I'm not a magician, but let's see if we can get there. Okay, so let's go back to our conversation about time. So who here has something in their history that you could look back on? This is kind of like group therapy for a second. That you've got, whether you put it under the bracket of real trauma, or you've got some trials and tribulations, disappointments, failures, regrets. Yeah? Do anyone have stuff like that in your history? Yeah? I'm going to start asking the question, who doesn't have? And this is an internet. This isn't like TV, you know. Anyway, so okay, so that's fair. And then who here, when you look at your future, could, say that whether it's right now or to some degree, you kind of fear the unknown. As a human being, when you look at your future, could you say, this gentleman, what's your name? Tim. Tim, you're awesome. I mean, apart from the jacket, your level of engagement here, his level of engagement. Let's just do a quick exercise. Everybody just put up your hand. Okay, so your shoulders work. No, keep it there, keep it there. Now put it up as 2-3 inches higher. Here's a question for all of you. Why didn't you give your all the first time? Just something to consider, right? I know it's a crowd. I've been in crowds and I'm also guilty, but ever since I learned that distinction, now if somebody asks me a question and it's true to me, I want to engage. If I talk to kids, they might not even have a yes to the question, but they want to be involved, right? Who here as parents know that, right? So I just want you to consider that thank you. In the realm of commitment to life, it's one of my favorite words. I don't have any tattoos. It's not really my bag. But there's one tattoo I ever considered in my life. It was the word commitment. And I thought, what an appropriate word to tattoo, right? And it's something I can be guilty of. Like I can look at it in all arenas of my life. To what degree am I fully committed to my partner? What degree am I fully committed to my business, to my health and the way that I conduct my routines, you know? And we're human, so there's a degree of like fudge in there, right? So anyway, just something to sit with. So let's go back to our past. We've got our present and our future. So who here isn't scared of the unknown? Okay, great. Okay, we've got a few. You're not scared of the unknown. Who here, because we just did the exercise, who here periodically has been scared of the unknown? Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you. Glad everyone's coming to life. This is a longevity conference. Anyway, so I want you to consider none of you are scared of the unknown. See, the way that the brain is designed, it's a survival mechanism, which is very helpful, but it's used to predict and protect. And what it's used to predict and protect is typically the things that we experienced in our history that we no longer want to experience. Makes sense, right? It's logical. If you went through trials and tribulations over here, shit that hurt, you had a breakup, you had a particular like disappointment in a stock or a business, then your brain is like, well, let's make sure we don't do that again. So I want you to consider that actually none of you are scared of the unknown, because as it relates to the future, what do any of you know? Like, let me rephrase the question. Do any of you know what's going to happen in the future? No. Something great. Okay, we got the optimist. The pessimist complains about the wind. What was that? That was a good one. So what I want you to consider is fear, future events appearing real as an acronym, is that you're not scared of the unknown. What you're actually being scared of, because you just asserted as a group that we don't know what's in the unknown, or we don't know what's in the future. So actually what's scaring you is your own brain's prediction of what might happen in the unknown. Ooh, it starts to become quite interesting. As who's listened to any of my work, podcasts or otherwise? I know Carol's in my mastermind. Okay, great. So I use a lot of quotes. So I want you to consider past hurt informs future fear. I work with some of the greatest performers in the world, top athletes. And if you're a sports psychologist and you're working with an athlete, I've worked with NBA, PGA, MLB, Olympians, all of it, best in the world. And typically there's one thing that athletes are told to perform well. What is it? Like if you've heard a sports psychologist speak to an athlete, what are they always really trying to do? Outside of results, to precursor to good results, yeah. Motivation for sure, goals. Be present, right? Be in the zone, be flow state. But see, telling someone to be present is an instruction which actually reinforces what? You're not. So now let's go back to one of the biggest contributors to aging and to disease, which is stress. So again, if we're here in the present, is there anybody who's here who's not here? Just curious. Probably most of you, but we're getting close. Slowly dragging you in. Okay, is there anybody here who has been in their past? Oh, fascinating. How did you do that? Okay, that's a great answer. I'll accept that. So yeah, so she said she's been in her past and her mind. Is there anyone here who's capable of being in your future? Again, maybe through thoughts, right? So I want you to consider, even though the illusion is past is here, we go through present and we end up in the future as this sort of linear track, it's all illusory. Because both past and present occur right now. Now, if you really understand that, it will completely change the way that you relate to time, which will inextricably change the way that your physiology responds to life. Because stress, if we look at the dynamics of time and space, if we think that these things exist, we've created time and we've created space. How many times have you said or heard someone say, things aren't great, but I'm getting there? Right? It's a pretty common human expression. I hate to break it to you, you're not. My invitation is for you to get here. So stress, which really is energetically a form of resistance. So when I asked the question earlier, if I'm able to hold my breath for 24 minutes and 37 seconds, what would arise within all of you to some degree is like, what's going on? Is he okay? This isn't what I signed up for. I didn't pay here for some guy to stand on stage and not say anything for 24 minutes, da, da, da. You get into a state of resistance. That is a biologically inbuilt, preset factory way that your mind is telling you there's something wrong. So I want you to consider that one of the biggest contributors to aging, all of these toxins, for sure, but is resistance. The fundamental resistance that we as humans have to what I would consider a default relationship to life, that there is something wrong out there. Can you see that? Can you find that within yourselves? So resistance, I want you to see, is synonymous with suffering. Suffering, to me, is inextricably connected to dis-ease. We've heard the word a couple of times, the woman at the beginning, dis-ease, the absence of ease. So you're not trying to get to a future, you're trying to get away from where you are. And that is a reactive state. And it's not your fault, it's built in. Because I said the primordial imperative of every mammal is to survive. So wanting, desire, we can get into the neurochemistry with dopamine and the gentleman's question or point about motivation. Listen, I'm prolifically creative. I'm up to all sorts of fun things. But I'm doing it here, recognizing there's nothing wrong with my life, and I'm not trying to get away from something. So if you have a history that's listed with trials, tribulations, disappointment, regret, the emotions are going to be depression, anger, frustration, all of which are past-based experiences, which means you are automatically going to be put into a state of reactivity where you're trying to get away from something. One of my more popular quotes is that you're never going to create the life you want by trying to fix the life you don't want. Be honest with yourself. How many of you trying to fix the life you don't want right now? Or did you just got it, right? You're like, no. I was before you asked the question, but now you just completely inspired me. I'm an enlightened human being with no fucking problems, and there's nothing to fix. Thank you for attending my TED Talk. Okay, so I'm just going to assert that whether you like it or not, most of you have got problems and you're trying to fix them. That's okay. That's a reactive state of mind. A slightly more upgraded, enlightened version is, okay, I'm not trying to get away from something, but I'm trying to work towards something. That's called proactive, right? But still it's creating time, which is creating stress. Stress being the precursor to the energy of resistance, which means I'm no longer in a state of equilibrium with life. In lay terms, I'm fighting life. And fighting in terms of an energetic, not only in terms of your autonomic nervous system, if you're on fight or flight in sympathetic, which many doctors here could speak to better than me, the cascade of the norepinephrines, the adrenalines, the cortisols that go through your body are stress hormones, right? Everybody knows that, yes? So when you're in sympathetic mode, it doesn't really matter what you're doing in terms of diet. I've got clients who've got more money than time. They've got the personal trainers. They've got all of the gadgets. They've got the private chef who even buys organic. But if they're still living inside of a perspective that is based in fight or flight because they still hate their dad, they're making their ex-wife wrong or whatever it is, then they are in a state of disease. Does that make sense? Amazing. You're tracking. We're good for time? Should I start feeling stressed?
10 minutes, you got 10 more.
No, we got all the time in the world. Time's an illusion. So, okay, let's do a very simple exercise. With your right hand, point to where your mind is. I mean, maybe there's some minds missing here. Okay, so we got some, yeah, great. So typically, a lot of you have obviously pointed here. I want you to consider that's your brain, not inaccurate, but it's not your mind. Your mind, this hopefully for some of you will be revolutionary. The body sits inside of the mind. So whilst we are listening to Dr. Santucci, I think it was, talking about lemon-scented pledge, as a toxin that is an endocrine disruptor, I learned that a long time ago. I've now switched to orange citrus. Making you still here, right? Okay. So I want you to consider that outside of environmental toxins, which of course have their impacts on the physiology, the most harmful toxin out there in the world is the contents of your own mind. 8 billion people on one planet, but there's 8 billion worlds because you all live within your own environment. So rather than thinking of the mind as something that is in here, I want you to consider that the mind is a space. It is your own personal environment. And the quality of that environment will inextricably give rise to the physiology that you experience as a three-dimensional being. Make sense? And hence why I go back to my statement earlier that you can't access true vitality until you free your mind, because no matter what you do, and I've got a lot of the toys at home, if you're living within an environment where you're not enough, where you're not safe, where you're not loved, where you don't think you're going to be okay, where you've got some sort of regret because you think that you fucked up and there's problems in life, then you're living inside of a toxic environment. So I want you to consider that the greatest opportunity to tap into true longevity, which is what inspired you all to be here, is not trying to get somewhere. It's actually not trying to garner anything, but in fact, as I jokingly say, I don't solve problems, I dissolve them. There's a beautiful quote by Rumi, and he says, "Seek not for love, but merely seek for all the barriers that you have built against it." Isn't that beautiful?
Can you say it again, please?
No. Don't have enough time. Of course. Seek not for love, but seek merely for all the barriers you have built against it. I want you to exchange the word love for anything that is important in your life. Seek not for abundance. Seek merely for the barriers you have built against it. Seek not for vitality. Seek merely for the barriers you've built against it. Do you see? It's so beautiful. The dissolution process. You're not overcoming some sort of traumatic history and trying to get away from it, disprove. That means that you're just dragging it with you, because where do past and future occur? Right now. When I was working with a PGA Tour, first real athlete I worked with, we tripled his winnings in 2 years, 2 seasons, which then led to a whole cascade of athletes I got to work with. And in this one tournament, within about 2 months of us working together, he was leading a tournament going into the weekend, which was significant. And if you're watching the Golf Channel, they always interview whoever's at the top of the leaderboard. So I was waiting for my player at the end of the course, 18th hole, behind the green. And one of the lead anchors from the Golf Channel came up to me and he said, "Peter, I just, want to congratulate you with your success with your players. Like, there's a lot of buzz here. Your players playing well." He said, "It's really inspiring, and I love a lot of your philosophy." He said, "Would you ever be open to sitting down and having a conversation with me?" I said, "Sure. I love what I get to do. I mean, I feel like the luckiest man alive. I'm literally removing human suffering. No small undertaking. But if you understand how it works, it's relatively easy." So after he said, I said, "Yes." He said, "That's amazing." He said, "Because I've got a lot of stuff in my past," which most humans do, right? We've been through our trials and tribulations. I was orphaned by the age of 17. Mum dies of cancer when I'm 7. Dad goes to work on the boats one day when I'm 17, never comes back, dies in a shipping disaster. We've all got our history. But I looked at him when he said, "I've got a lot of things in my past." I said, "No, you don't." He was obviously confused. I said, "They're with you right now." And he really got it. See, there's a quote by Byron Katie. He says, "My favorite thing about the past is it's over." My question is, how many of you still holding on to it? There's 2 predominant energies that we fight. Past, we tend to hold. It defines the ego. We get to be right. Again, one of my quotes is, "Being right is the poor man's version of self-worth." I knew that was too good to, that would never last, right? The ego, unfortunately, is set to self-destruct. So where are you being right about things in your life? And then the future, we're trying to avoid. Creates anxiety, fear, apprehension, worry. So I want you to consider the greatest access to longevity is less about time and it's more about experience. It's not about peptides and, you know, all the P's, the pills, the procedures, the GLPs, right? It's about presence. And if you could really get that, and that's why I really wanted to take time, maybe just in this incredibly inspiring group, but just to slow things down a bit. And maybe just ask yourself the question, is it true that there's anything wrong? I want you to consider, because this was my promise and I like to keep my word, none of you have problems. You have life circumstances, and I know a lot of them are challenging. And then there's two other components to the formula of a problem. There are your life circumstances. I've got plenty of stuff to deal with. Then there's always you. Have you noticed that wherever you go, there you are? And I can remember quickly, I got 2 minutes, I did my first talk was 20-something years ago. I was in a little yoga studio, like about 15 people showed up. I think 12 of them thought there was a yoga class. Which really was, right? True yoga is like stretching this, not stretching this, right? And so this one woman came up. I could tell she was kind of like, you know, being a bit flirty, which is always fun. But anyway, and she's like, oh, I'm going to India next week. And I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Like, why? And she said, well, you know, that's where I'm going to find happiness. And I was like, okay, well, good luck. And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you're going to be there. Didn't go down too well. But anyway, I said, happiness is available in your backyard. You're just not going to get as many air miles. But the point is, folks, like I really hope that from today, if there's one thing you could realize is that the true access to vitality is presence. And I would really bring it down to one word, which is peace. True peace. Not trying to get anywhere else. So that even if I had held my breath for 24 minutes and 37 seconds, which would be really fucking impressive, none of you would have batted an eye because you're okay with what is. And if you can live a life where you're not in a state of resistance, you're not fighting circumstances, you realize you don't have problems, you have circumstances, there's you, and then if you remove the resistance to life, that is your greatest access to longevity. Because you're no longer in a state of fight or flight. You slip into, even physiologically, your parasympathetic nervous system, you digest your food, you are with the people that you love, and you're not under the impression that the life you want is some way off in the distant future. I've yet to meet anyone who knows how to get there. But I really encourage you to be here. Thank you. I can do 3. It's like the NFL. You know, there's this linebacker. He said, you know, you want a yard? I'll give you 3. You want 5 yards? I'll give you 3. Do you have a question? I do. Okay, go ahead.
You're in that, well, first of all, amazing.
I will accept that. I don't resist life.
You're in the moment, and you are relating to another human being.
Yeah.
Who is not.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Do you try to get them there, or are you at peace with wherever they are? And
me personally, what it looked like.
Like my daughter, who's 24.
Yeah. Yeah, no, beautiful question. Who can relate to the question? First of all, in case you couldn't hear it, he's like, you know, if you're there present and you feel that someone you're with, particularly if it's someone of relevance and importance in your life, they're not there, what can you do? And what does that look like? Well, what it looks like is when I started my talk with all of you reprobates, right? Now you're here, we can actually have a conversation. No, jokingly, you know, there's a quote in the scriptures. I studied Ayurveda. Who's here familiar with Ayurveda? Right, beautiful science. It's sort of the sister science to yoga, like traditional Chinese medicine. And there's a quote in there, a sutra, that says, you know, in the presence of a master, somebody will feel the depth of their own resistance or insecurity within the 11th of a second. So the invitation isn't to try and change, external circumstances. That's the seduction of life, right? Because if we're under the illusion that I feel the way I feel because of life, I'm upset because of one of my best, I'm pissed off because of what my spouse said. Now you're a victim of circumstance. Nobody in this room is a victim of circumstance. If there's only one thing you take away from my talk today, I want you to understand, you're all victims of perspective. It's not life that's upsetting you, it's the way you're looking at life. So this gentleman, Tim, who's now my favorite person in the crowd, because not only did he put his hand up the highest,
I'll take that.
but he's got a great question. So to answer the question, if you feel that you're in the presence of somebody who isn't present, be so with them. Because if you're trying to change something, especially with this 24-year-old daughter, which I totally get, the stage of her life, especially being a woman, we heard about all of the pressures, especially with the panel, which was great. Shout out to Carol, who also, by the way, not paid sponsorship, but mentioned my mastermind. So if you want to really go down the rabbit hole, I have a 3-month mastermind. Is it worth it? Hell yeah. But anyway, to truly be with them. See, I do a lot of live events. I've got one coming up in LA, as I said, I'm going to Dubai and Miami. At the beginning, I say, I want everybody in the space that I hold to feel 3 things: seen, heard, and held. So with your daughter, hit home. I promise you, if somebody's not really with you, they're mildly in a state of fear. Why? Because the primordial wiring is to be somewhere we're not, because we're trying to survive. If you're not being where you are because you're trying to be somewhere you're not, how can you be present? So what that person is usually feeling fundamentally at the deepest level is not safe. I do a lot of relationship stuff. The number one thing that's usually missing in dysfunctional relationships is either one or both partners don't feel safe in the relationship. How many women can relate to that? So for women, it's a little bit more visceral. It's like physical. You walk home, it's 10 o'clock at night, it's dark. We live in a society that unfortunately meant that women are automatically in a state of fear. To my brothers out there, can we change that, please? Can we make sure that a woman can go to her car at 10 o'clock at night and see a man coming down the street on the same side and not go into an immediate state of fight or flight? So, to answer your question again, the way to help someone be present is be uber present, even though that's a misnomer, right? You're present or you're not. What she's looking for is a safe space to be herself. Restlessness and anxiety, which most people have today, is really, again, a dysfunctional relationship to time where they're trying to get away from a history that hurts and trying to avoid a future that they're scared of. If you can hold a space in a container for somebody to feel so seen, heard, and held, you will see their nervous system change before your eyes. I work with people live, like if we have more time. I might work with someone, it's really fun to help someone step out of a prison that they were oblivious to, and you see immediately physiological markers change. If you watch any of my stuff on Instagram, if you were to join my mastermind, when I work with someone, you will immediately see the first thing I see is breathing changes. And invariably, someone will say, whew, I haven't had a breath like that for years. So anyway, I know we ran over, but thank you. That was very gracious of you to give me more time.